Recently, I turned around losing campaigns into winners and ended up doing an additional $250,000. This video is all going to be about what can you do to turn around your Facebook ad campaigns, because there's 3 that I did that completely turned them around in 14 days and 30 days. And it's not as hard as you think, but you have to understand what's causing this to happen to begin with, and also what are the things, or what I like to call levers, I can pull to turn them around. So I don't know how long you guys have been doing this, but if it's your first time you see me, hey, my name is Ray. I am one of the partners at Right Hook Digital. We have worked with 352 e-commerce brands. We've gotten to 23 brands to $1 million a month, many who started around $50,000 a month. And I have 12 different teams who all they do is work on and execute and scale e-commerce brands. And recently, I don't know what happened on Meta or in the world of e-commerce, but the last 50 days have been really, really tough. And things that were working just stopped working. Ads that were working stopped working. Angles and concepts that were working stopped working. And so you have to do something. Now, there's sometimes you don't want to do anything. You don't want to touch it. And I've made other videos explaining when not to touch anything. Maybe I'll make another video. If you want to see it, let me know. There's sometimes you don't want to touch anything, but there's times where it's very clear you have to make a change. So what are the things that we did to turn around campaigns that did an additional $250,000 after we made those changes? I hope it's okay with you guys, but I really like to write things out when I'm talking to you because it helps you to really get the clear picture so I can draw on it as well. So let's just talk about what are those things. Now, before I talk about what are the things you can do to turn around a campaign? Like, here are those campaigns right here. So this is brand right one. This is brand right here. This is a campaign where in the previous 30 days, because I'm doing 30 days in the previous 30 days, I made a bunch of changes, and you can see right here, additional $250,000. Also for the second campaign, made the right changes, an extra $87K, but really that was still at the beginning. So we're actually going to remove that. But then these right here were evergreen and running a long time, additional 500 grand, additional 55K, additional 28K, additional 25K. So what were the things? Well, when your back is against the wall and things just stopped working, or they were working, no longer working, and many different permutations of that, what can you do? Well, the first thing is we have to understand, like, why is it sucking? And what is causing it to suck? Now, there could be many reasons this is happening. So we need to understand those reasons, because I will tell you exactly what I did, but my job is also to make you a better marketer. And part of making a better marketer is make it so that you can fish, because I've heard that wisdom. If you guys have ever heard that folks wisdom before, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach him how to fish, feed him for a lifetime. I want you guys to fish for a lifetime. So first of all, why do we think it was sucking? Well, number one, is it the audience? Like, is it the audience? Is there something in our setup that the audience made that screw up? So for example, some warning signs that can typically be, in my opinion, is where maybe your audience is too restrictive. Maybe you're doing interests and the exclusions you were doing are also too restrictive. I see this happen a lot with people who are targeting really small geographies. Like if you're in New Zealand and you're targeting just people in New Zealand, that can happen all the time, where things that were working just stop really quickly because the population is really, really small and you max out the population. I've seen that also people who are targeting specific states or just like these different zip codes. But if that's not you, is it my targets? Do I have the wrong targets? Okay. Do I have the right targets? Now, why I bring this up is because if you don't have the right targets, Meta's going to have variance, it's going to have fluctuation. Well, let's say, for example, my target CPA is $50. There's going to be times that my CPA may run as high as $60. It doesn't mean I have to change anything, but it just may be that some days or some weeks it jumps that high, and there may be some days it's as low as 40. But over the average, it may be $50. When you look at over the last 30 days or 45 days or 60 days, and this is, I think, the hardest thing for people to understand, that you have to build into your plan, in my opinion, when it comes to scaling brands with ads, is variance. You have to allow a certain amount of variance. And I made another video where I talk about exactly what are the targets that we set to set those variances. But listen, like, sometimes I won't touch anything, but I will have very clear triggers of, if it goes on long enough at $60, I'm forced to do something. But I bring this up to make the point, just because your CPA is going to vary over some days and weeks, it doesn't mean something wrong. In fact, I've seen this play out a lot, where if I touch nothing, it goes right back to it. It was just what was happening on Meta, because Meta is a real-time platform of people's attention. What that means is different parts of the year, people are on the platform less or more than others, and they're in the buying mood less or more than others. And so you will see that highly correlated to your own campaign's performance. Typically, I see during holidays, attention is down on the platforms or in the buying mood less on the platforms, and our CPAs go up, and vice versa. All right, next one is my ad set or my campaign even set up right? Now, we're going to talk about this. For example, what we typically like to do when we're doing this, just for your sake, is for a targetable audience, we like to choose very broad audiences. Not always, but 99% of the time, very broad. So typically we are literally doing just broad because we're creative strategists. We make creatives that do the targeting. But typically it's very broad. Now, it can also be a big lookalike. I'm okay with that. For example, I don't care about being right. I just care about what makes the most amount of money. And recently we've had a few brands where broad isn't performing as well as like a lookalike, for example, purchases, but it's still a very broad audience. So it's a broad, or it can be what I call LLA, which is a lookalike, but we do very loose exclusions. So typically we are just excluding something like purchasers. Okay. Now, if we have a very, very high spending account, will add additional exclusions, but unless you're spending like $300,000 a month, this is not as big of a deal depending on your geography you're targeting. But we typically exclude purchasers. That's pretty much it. Now, in some instances, we'll be forced in some strategies to do other exclusions, but for this case, keep it simple. So we're typically doing that. Now, where I've seen people screw up is they start doing like where they are including purchasers, for example, in this targetable audience. And the reason why that's a problem is because Meta will then start to serve the people who already bought or just bought your product, and it'll confuse the pixel. It'll confuse it, and it'll start to optimize for the easiest, lowest hanging result. Because if you are doing what we call on Meta, which is highest volume, meaning you're doing a completely let Meta decide how to bid for you. And essentially Meta is just trying to optimize for the most amount of conversions within your budget. And so if you teach at that setting and you operate that setting and you're not excluding purchasers at a bare minimum, it will optimize for the lowest hanging fruit. I've seen this happen a lot with our supplement brands or brands that use a lot of influencers, for example, where they came to us, they weren't excluding purchasers. And what happened was Meta was going after the easiest, lowest hanging fruit, which was people who were following influencers who already bought or just bought. And it just kept optimizing for those people. And a for sure way to tell this is happening is if you look at your view versus click attribution. If you have high view attribution, that's what's happening. Now, in addition to this, typically what we're doing is we're excluding all the pixel fires of it, as well as our list. So we're uploading our entire list all time to exclude that as well. Now you may have to do some other things, and again, for some strategies and some high spend accounts, we go more aggressive. Like we'll exclude certain actions on the website, for example, maybe even certain types of engagers. Because when you're spending a lot of money, like for us, if we're spending like $500,000, we got to force Meta to only show it to new people. And there's a really cool metric that you can create inside Meta that shows you the incremental new reach of people that your ads are hitting and that they're targeting. That's a really great thing to see how effective is my ad account, ad setup being, and always serving to new people. But if you're not having a high spend account right now, this is not of a big deal for you. All right. The next thing I have to review before I fix it is, are the creatives too narrow? What do I mean by that? I've taught this before, but Meta works off what I call audience pocket theory. Like this is our philosophy and our theory. So let's say, for example, this rectangle is everyone on Meta who is possible to target, okay? And let's say I'm running an ad for a supplement brand and I'm running an ad for a supplement brand. In that supplement brand, I am targeting dads who have belly fat, right? And so what Meta does when it looks at your creative, it looks at what's in the image, it looks at what you're saying in the image, even the ethnicity of the person in the image, the setting of the image, and it asks itself, who do we think this is going to resonate with? And who do we think is most likely to purchase the product? And because your creative is showing a white Caucasian dad with a dad bod who wants to get healthier or get more fit or get more jacked, and it also knows you're selling a pre-workout powder, it's going to be like, okay, if everyone that we have to target, who are the right people? So they probably think like this. They think, okay, here's the pocket of women. Here is the pocket of single men. Here's the pocket of people who are older. Here's the pocket of guys who don't have dad bods. They're already jacked. Here's the pocket of overweight white guys. Here's the pocket of dads on Meta who are also white. And so it's the pockets. So what Meta does is if this is the dads who right here, let's say this is women, right, and all different pockets, it will serve that ad to that pocket they think it's going to resonate with. And so the problem that we have to teach brands is even what's in your creative can be the reason why you can't scale. Now, I'm not saying dads with dad bods who are white, who want to get jacked, is not a big enough audience. In fact, there's millions and millions of people who are that. But the hook or the concept in the creative could be the thing that's stopping you from scaling, because Meta looks at what's in the creative, it understands what's being said, understands what's being sold, and it's like, okay, they obviously want more dads. So for example, if I had a piece of creative that was talking about, we want dads with pink hair who want to be more fit, very, very small audience, very, very, very tiny. Meta's going to serve it to those people, and it's going to not serve it to the other people it could still be applicable to. So sometimes the reason why you stop scaling is you've essentially exhausted out this potential audience that Meta thinks wants this product, because Meta is not in the business of serving ads to people that it knows or has a high probability are not going to want that thing, because it's going to be a bad experience. So your job as a marketer is to then tailor your product or your creative or your service, whatever it is, to different types of people, so that now have different pools of audience you can tap into. Okay. And so another thing I have to ask myself is like, is there something out of my control? Like, is something happening outside of my control? So typically I've seen that's things like, for example, like inventory goes out, or that's things like the site gets broken, or that's things like, or something outside the control, or something happened on the page or whatever. But I'm bringing this up because you have to ask yourself, when something stopped working, it sucks. What are the root causes of that? Because if I can solve and I can identify that root cause, I can solve that root cause. All right, so what did I do? What did I do to turn these campaigns around? So once I understood all these different variables, and there's more, but this is a big catch-all for a lot of these, is once I understood what the problem was, here are the things I did to fix it. So number one, the thing I did was I solved for this ad too much of the view attribution. Okay, so view attribution, click attribution, too much of it was going to view attribution. So it was something like 40% of the ads and the purchases were being view attribution, and then 60% was click. The reason why that's a problem is because you want your ads to be what I call is more incremental. And that's just a terminology marketers use to say, for every dollar I spend, is it only going to new people to get a new person to take a result or an action? Because acquisition's job is to drive net new customers. And then the rest of the things that you do on your brand, which is retention, launching new products and programs, and your loyalty groups, those drive repeat sales depending on what you sell. So first thing I did, so here's what I did. So number one is I switched away from view attribution to click. So by default, Meta does what we call 1 day click, 1 day view attribution. I got rid of the 1 day view and I only did 7 day click. Now, why is that? Because if 40% of my attributable purchases on Meta was 1 day view, that means someone saw an ad, they didn't click it, they didn't take any action, but somehow they purchased and Meta took the credit for that. That's telling me that my ads actually suck and Meta's over-optimizing for those types of people. I don't want that. So 7 day click, I'm essentially retraining, because Meta uses AI and machine learning. You get to train it with the data you send it. So by switching to 7 day click, I'm telling Meta, I only want you to go after people who are the most probabilistic to click on an ad. Okay. Number two is I launched broader and more curiosity ads. So like the example I told you previously, where sometimes the creative was too narrow, and this brand, I just had this sneaking suspicion that the ads people had seen for a long period of time, they're not the only person selling this product in the space as well. And I've had this growing suspicion that because performance didn't die overnight, it's been a slow decline, that I need to do something different, something radically different. So what I did was, I was like, okay, I feel like who we're targeting is very, very narrow. A great example of this is if you're like an athleisure wear brand and the people you're mainly targeting, for example, are like women who do CrossFit, for example. There's a lot of people who do that, but it's also very narrow. So an example of this would be, can I go up market? Can I make it bigger? Can I go after women who like to be fit or people who like to exercise? Much, much broader. Now, with that means you have to somehow do something to drive curiosity. So we created more curiosity in the ad that this was a new product that hasn't been on the market, that has a special thing in its Fabletics, that you can do all these extra things and it lasts longer, makes you breathe easier, less sweat lines, and less painting lines, for example. Like that is something that drives curiosity for them to want to click and want to explore it. Number three, and this is really going to shock you, and it's probably countercultural, is I don't kill the losers. What happens is when most people are in this situation, the first thing they start to do, they start killing things. And don't get me wrong, like that logically seems like the right thing to do. And sometimes that is the right thing to do. But that was not the right thing to do in this situation. And I had reasons to believe that, as I don't kill the losers. Now, why is that? Because everything in your ad account, your campaigns, your ad sets, your ads is a system. Because how Meta works is, I'm gonna do a really crappy drawing example. Let's say I have 3 ads, okay? And I'm one person, okay? But Meta thinks I want this product. What's gonna happen is Meta, when I'm scrolling my feed, it's gonna serve me this ad, okay? But I don't take an action on it. Then it's gonna serve me this ad. And maybe I stop my scroll a little bit, it's interesting, I don't take an action on it. Then Meta is gonna serve me this ad, but I take an action on this. And the reason why this is important is because this ad, it got the initial click, but how do we know it wasn't influenced initially by these ads right here? How do we know that? Well, you don't know that. And that's why ad account is a system. Meta will serve ads to other people, and sometimes it'll serve you the same ad more than once if it has a reason to believe that you will take action on it. So that's why in this example, things were working and stopped working. My belief and my hypothesis was that I think I need to introduce something new into the system, a better curiosity driving ad. And that by doing that, my other ads would actually help contribute to the sale. And so in this example, I didn't kill the losers, just incorporated new ads, and it helped to pick things back up again. Now, eventually I had to kill some things that even after that introduction still weren't hitting the targets I need to hit. But for the most part, some of those ads that were working are still in that account right now. And then number 4, which is very simple, is I scale it. We'll call it Chad style, okay? So very simple is if you watch my other videos on like what are the rules we use, remember if you watch that video, we have something like this. We have your target, we have the upper 25%, and we have the bottom 25%. So for example, if my CPA target is $50, okay, and $60 is the upper bound, and let's say $40 is the lower bound. What that means is this is my acceptable variance. But if over enough period of time, I'm above $60, I make some really tough decisions. I start killing things. But if it's in between this, I'll give it some grace, okay? And if it's below this, I'll make some small budget incremental increases. But if it's way below this, like below 25%, man, I'm scaling hard. Like I'm changing budget every day, maybe more than once a day. And that's how you can scale very quickly. So that's just a really simple example in this video, how we do the scaling, especially the Chad style. It's very simple, upper bound, lower bound, and that's how we do it. And that is how we made massive improvements in a short period of time, and you can too. So the next time you're faced with, man, my campaigns are working and they're not working anymore, stop, think through these scenarios and think through, number 1, is this something outside of my control? Is it something within my control? And do I believe my system is telling me I have to incorporate something new? Or is my system telling me that I can just keep it the same because I think it's outside circumstances that are influencing that?